I'm going to read to you a parable that I do not believe in, so I'm giving you that disclaimer ahead of time so that no one starts listening to this, and if I were listening to a channel and they were reading this parable, I'd be like, I'm done, not going to listen to it. Not that I listen to any channels, but I'm making a point. This is a worldly parable. It does not come from the Bible. It goes around counterfeit Christianity, but I want to make a point. This is the parable of the drowning man. A storm descends on a small town, and the downpour soon turns into a flood. As the waters rise, the local preacher kneels in prayer on the church porch, surrounded by water. By and by, one of the townsfolk come up the street in a canoe. Better get in, preacher, the waters are rising fast. No, says the preacher, I have faith in the Lord, he will save me. Still the waters rise. Now the preacher is up on the balcony, wringing his hands in supplication, when another guy zips up in a motorboat. Come on, preacher, we need to get you out of here. The levee's going to break any minute. Once again, the preacher is unmoved. I shall remain. The Lord will see me through. After a while, the levee breaks, and the flood rushes over the church until only the steeple remains above water. The preacher is up there, clinging to the cross. Ugh, gross. When a helicopter descends out of the clouds, and a state trooper calls down to him through a megaphone. Grab the ladder, preacher. This is your last chance. Once again, the preacher insists the Lord will deliver him, and predictably, he drowns. A pious man, the preacher goes to heaven. After a while, he gets an interview with God, and he asks the Almighty, Lord, I had unwavering faith in you. Why didn't you deliver me from that flood? God shakes his head. What did you want from me? I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter. Everybody laughs. All the counterfeit Christians laugh. This is so repulsive and disgusting. So, what is the message of this worldly parable? Which, by the way, this version of the parable right here was posted in Psychology Today's website in 2009. Anybody else? Posting, any other pagans posting God's parables? Do they post his parables in the Bible? Yeah, I don't think so, but they're picking up these. Any other pagans picking up his holy days in the Bible? Nah, I didn't think so. But they'll pick up Christmas and Easter. They'll pick up that image of the cross. Well, I referenced this disgusting parable the other day because, the message here is that God doesn't perform miracles anymore. That and that's truly something that people believe in counterfeit Christianity. In case you haven't come across it, I mean, I imagine you have. In one way or another, maybe they haven't outright said it, but the attitude is God really is not sovereign. That God would trick you like this? You get up to heaven and he's like, well, I sent you this and that. I mean, you had unwavering faith? Oh, what does that mean to me? Well, actually, it means everything to the real God. Everything. And he does not forsake his children for having unwavering faith. And as a matter of fact, even if you're wrong about something and you stuck to your faith, that would mean more to God, even though he's able to make you stand. He's able to make you stand and make sure that you're right. But that means more to God. And, I'm reminded of early on when the Father was drawing me to the Son that there were certain things that I believed to be a sin. I shared with you before that I had gone to an Indian market and they had little statues, behind the register. And I had read in the Word that you are not supposed to eat food sacrificed to idols. And so I thought, okay, well, I better throw out this food. I didn't realize it at the time, but later was reading in the Bible after I got home with all those groceries. And so I threw out the food. Paul says idols are nothing and all food is clean. And so there wasn't really a concern about that. Food sacrificed to idols is really, teachings taught by demons. What's a statue going to do your food? It can't do anything to your food. But if you believe it to be a sin in your heart and you live in faith, in true faith, God may use that experience to test you, which he was doing with me, and then he's going to teach you the truth. Well, I've been having this situation recently, and I just mentioned this a few days ago. Today, I really was kind of exhausted because as I shared with you on another video, I had a couple of contractors come here. I've had this issue that keeps going on with my air conditioner and where it's kicking out humid air. So there's cool air, but that doesn't really do anything when you have humidity being kicked out at the same time. Then you just have cool air and you feel muggy and disgusting. But God has placed me in this circumstance, and let me tell you, please notice that that's what I'm saying. That's what I believe. That's what I know. God placed me in this circumstance. He sent this circumstance to teach me something. And the thing and I have been banging my head against the wall for months. So this has been very discouraging. And as it goes on, it's just even more like my desperation was like increasing. Like, I need someone's got to come out here and fix this thing. And I think that it's also exacerbating my respiratory stuff because, I'm coughing more. And so all of this, is contributing to my frustration. And I have, I've had people out here, I can't tell you how many people I've had out here who can't eat, they do not know more than I do. I've done a lot of research online about what this is. Pretty sure I know what the problem is, but they come out and they just start throwing stuff against a wall that doesn't even make sense. Sometimes, it's just obvious that they outright do not know what they're talking about. And not to mention that they charge these service calls to do a diagnosis that they are completely incompetent to do. And they should just say that, but they don't. And they never, it's just one thing on top of another, super frustrating. And so it was contributing to my desperation, to my frustration, to an idolatry that I often will go to when I feel desperate, where I'll start stepping apart from God because I'm frustrated and I'm desperate and I feel a sense of urgency, and I end up in this compulsion because this needed to be something that was addressed today in my work with him, that I needed to repent. I needed to become aware of where this is coming from, and it certainly comes from my relationship with my father. I'm not going to get into it, but listen, I tell you all the time, when there are unresolved issues in you, God has sent every circumstance in your life. So if you refuse to address unresolved issues, what's going to happen is that the devil is going to slither into that chink in your armor, and he is going to compel you to behave in ways that where you think you're making right what happened so many years ago. And so what I was doing was repeating a dynamic that I had with my father, who could have cared nothing about anybody, let alone the children that depended on him. And I kept trying to convince myself that, like I did with my dad, that daddy loves me and he's going to do what's best for me. And if I'm just good enough, then he will be good. My loyalty will somehow change him. And I was reenacting that dynamic in idolatry with these contractors because I just really wanted to believe that someone was going to help me. And I kept putting my hope and my trust in them. Well, I finally broke today because this morning I got on the phone with a guy that was going to do the job. And he started swearing on the phone with me. And I let it go the first time. This guy does not shut up. He keeps talking. He does not listen to you. And then he swore again, and something inside of me I just hung up on him. I was like, I can't work with this guy. And I stood there for a minute, and I had an out loud conversation with God in my kitchen. And I said, what I want to do is sit down and find the next person and compulsively look for another person to come out here and save me. What I'm gonna do is recognize that you are going to keep sending me people who are no good. I am going to keep feeling this desperation. I'm not going to trust anybody if I don't sit down and deal with what you're calling me to learn. That is wisdom, you guys. That is wisdom, to understand that this is not an air conditioning situation. This is a situation that God has put me in to teach me something and root something out of me so that it will no longer be a hindrance to my full submission to God. So that's exactly what I did. And then I got exhausted. I did a few things and, had a wonderful conversation with a new friend on the channel. I was so blessed by that conversation. I really enjoyed talking with her. And then I went to bed. I took a nap. And I got up from the nap, and there's nothing like taking a nap and waking up and feeling muggy. I'm so tired of it. And so I got up from my nap and I felt that mugginess, and I started dialoguing with God, and he reminded me of that parable that I read a few days ago. And because I started to go, okay, well, what do I need to do, Lord? He reminded me of the parable, and immediately I started rending my heart toward, I'm not going to go looking for anyone unless you tell me to go looking for someone. I'm going to trust you to lead me in this process. I know that you are a God of miracles. I know that you can send someone. If you want to send someone, that's what you will do. I know you can even make this situation go away without me doing anything. And do you know that I looked at my phone And an electrician who recently did a job for me, who I really like and who was very honest and reasonable. I trust him. He sent me a message with information for an air conditioning specialist who I had asked him about when he was here, and I'll read the message to you. He said he's good, licensed, and bonded, and has been doing this a while. I've worked with him in the past, and he did the AC on my father's house. He's a good guy. Now, it doesn't mean, so I have to check my heart to make sure that I'm not idolizing this guy and I'm not thinking this guy is going to save me, but that I step back and I still do the same things that God's been teaching me in this situation. Test and discern. Test the spirit, discern the fruit, make sure he knows what he's talking about. Well, I got on the phone with him and I explained the situation, and immediately he knew what I knew based on all of the research that I've done, that these AC units are too big for the units at my property. And so he's going to he explained to me what would be happening, that the AC unit is going to short cycle and it's not going to run long enough. And so that the coil, it's not, the air is not going to hit the coil and it's not going to dehumidify. He knew what was going on. Do you know how many HVAC people I have spoken with who did not understand this, but still charge a fee just to come to your house and diagnose something that they will not admit they know nothing about? I mean, it's concerning when you're paying for them to come out just to diagnose and they have no clue what they're talking about. In fact, the contractor that I spoke with this morning, I had to explain it to him. But that's how you start to lose sense when you're desperate. You lose sense that if you have to explain to someone what's going on in their line of work, they probably aren't even going to do the job right. You lose all sense when you start idolizing people like that. So I got on the phone with him. I ended up speaking with this guy actually in the middle of me doing this message. And God tested me on something else. I spoke with the guy and he said, "Are you available this Thursday?" And I said, yes, I'm available this Thursday. Well, guess what? Wednesday night to Thursday night is God's new moon. It is the festival of trumpets. And I observe Sabbath rest as God has commanded during that time. And just because I observe Sabbath rest doesn't mean that I say, well, I'm going to cause someone else to desecrate God's holy day or his new moon. So I got back with him and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You can come any day except for this particular Thursday or any Saturday." So he's going to be here on Monday at 3:30. A week from today. But you know what? If I obey God, that's all that matters. I've been dealing with this for literally the last 2 years. I didn't entirely know what was going on. I thought it was the root, not enough ventilation in the attic, but 2 years. So I can either look at it as what's another week, and as long as I'm obeying God, he's going to take care of me. Or I can get all freaked out in my flesh. I can compromise what God has commanded me to do, and I can invoke judgment on myself. But I have committed in my heart that I am going to believe as people believed in the Bible, because he's not let me down. He has not let me down yet. And I know he's not going to let me down. So I just wanted to share that testimony with you. Just a real-time testimony of what it is that I'm going through in my heart in order to obey, in order to stand. Because I don't think there's enough people who are living that out and therefore are able to share what this looks like, to truly trust, to truly obey, to truly submit, and to believe that God is who he says he is. He is still a God, the God who performs miracles, who is faithful to those who believe in him, even if they're wrong, even if what they did was believe in something that they didn't quite understand yet. He will honor what we've done in our hearts, and he will move us and make us stand. That's the truth. That stupid parable is not the truth. That parable is a heresy taught by demons. The fact that people would claim to be in the Bible and recite that parable in a church, in a counterfeit church from a pulpit, swapping parables with the world. I mean, good grief, with pagans. What is that? It's just so grievous and disgusting. We have a God who is who he says he is. Thank you for listening.